LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return, but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Are you a lifelong fan of General Hospital?
Are you a new fan who wants to know more about the history of the show?
Do you enjoy talking about the show with others?
Do you find yourself yelling at the TV?
Is your self-care an hour a day in Port Charles?
If so, we invite you to join hosts
Amanda Kimmel
and Shannon Coach at the place where all the hidden conversations take place and secrets are revealed.
Meet us at Pier 54,
a General Hospital fan podcast.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Port Charles 411. Today we are doing part 2 of Lila Quartermaine. I've said it so many times though, but I'm so glad that you picked this.
Thank you for doing all the work for it. I was trying to pick it because there was a nice little write-up that was short and sweet. And of course, you're like, no.
You should have known that was not going to be adequate for Lila.
That's true. I should have known, but I just kind of said it because it was Mother's Day weekend. But it does seem perfect, especially with all the wedding stuff that happened this week for Brooklyn and Chase. And there were so many references of Lila and just the Quartermaine past. So
and they've shown her and Edward's picture a lot.
Yes.
So, and I think that's something we should do too, is their whole relationship. I wonder if there's a write-up on Edward and Lila's marriage.
That just make us mad at Edward.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of being covered now though by just covering her.
Right.
So we left off, what was it? It was like kind of the end of 1984. And it's when we found out that what's-her-face drank Lila's
heart medicine.
Who was that? Hold on. Beatrix? Was it Beatrix? Beatrice. Yes. Beatrice died because she drank Lila's heart medication by accident. And then really for the rest of 1984, there wasn't much. The following month in November, we did one on Jimmy Lee, and I don't remember all of this, but like Jimmy Lee was telling Celia about Lila's marriage to Tolliver, but he only told her after she signed a paper. Basically, I feel like it was a prenup, saying that like she wasn't going to go after all of his money and blah, 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 blah. And then they started to try to were they trying to do that because Jimmy Lee was Edward's child?
Right.
They might have been doing it because then Alan would have not had any claim to anything and it would have all gone to Jimmy Lee. Okay, maybe that makes sense. But they were trying to find people from the wedding by investigating the wedding photo. Because at this point, Tolliver had died, and then I guess his sister died too. And so they were trying to find the flower girl. And I thought this was really smart. They started looking through school photos.
That is smart.
They went to the schools, like the library or whatever, and had the school yearbooks. And at one point, it mentioned that Celia said that she was trying to help Lila. And I'm like, what part of this is helping Lila? But Alan and Monica were determined to stop Celia's search. So I think she was trying to blackmail them. I'm not entirely sure.
That would make sense.
Yeah. And then in December, they were in, Lila and Edward were in the drawing room discussing the holidays. I like that they call it the drawing room, and now we just call it the den, right?
Right.
Edward is being a Scrooge and claims to have heard noises in the East Wing and wants to investigate. Lila dissuades him and convinces him to help her send out the Christmas cards. They spent the afternoon drinking tea and flirting on the couch, which, if you guys have never seen Lila and Edward, like these were the cutest, even though this was not our Edward. This was still previous Edward, but they were just as cute. It's all about Lila.
Yep.
And then later on, Edward moved to making martinis and started making some suggestions to Lila.
Oh my.
I know. And Alan, Monica, and the boys all walk in, and this would have been Jason and AJ, but they were still kids.
Yep.
Lila told them that they all looked stressed and that they should find a quiet place to spend the day alone, just like she and Edward had. Like, hint, hint. Your parents need to be alone right now.
Right.
And then in 1985, she wasn't really the center of any storyline at the beginning of the year. Actually, really at all during 1985. But in August, I guess Edward had decided to go on vacation by himself, and Lila's feelings were hurt. But then she wound up going to meet him on his vacation. So I don't know. I just thought that was weird.
Mm-hmm.
In September, Lila and Edward hosted a regatta at the Quartermaine mansion. A boat carrying Terry, Amy, and Josh sank near the Q boat docks. I've never heard of this regatta. I've never heard of this boat crash or sinking. And then a few weeks later, Edward and Lila plan to go to Rio. Edward and Lila they have to do shots. They have to get shots before their trip, and then they come back in October. And then in November, Edward wants help in forcing Felicia to surrender her power of attorney to the Donnelly shipping firm. Lila overhears and tells Edward she will take action if he proceeds to hurt Felicia.
Aw, I love her. I love her. All right, and then in 86, in March, Monica filed for divorce. In April at ELQ, Edward and Lila try to use a computer. Oh, that had to be funny. Mm-hmm. Lila and Edward signed the papers for the new $3 million mansion. After the fallout of ELQ, the Qs lost their fortune, realizing that filet mignon is no longer part of their reality. The Qs clip coupons for lean cuisine. Lila's looking on the bright side of things. The bus fare is free for senior citizens. Lila wants to sell her jewelry, and Monica offers to buy it so she can later buy it back. Amanda tries to buy Lila's jewelry, but Monica stops her by bidding over what Amanda offered. Lila warns Monica that if she tries to divorce Alan, it might rekindle old feelings of the homicidal temper he has. Well, that's not very nice to say about your son.
I know.
Don't leave my son because he may become homicidal. What?
Right.
In May, Edward returns and reports to Lila and Alan that he has successfully sold the Southampton estate. Lila also sold her jewelry to Monica to help the Qs stay afloat. Derek Barrington arrives at the Qs with an offer of $1.7 million for the gargantuan new mansion they've bought. The offer is firm until Lila announces a surprise call from estranged Cecilia, who says that she wants to move back to Port Charles and can spend $2.5 million on Edward's white elephant. Derek ups the ante to $2.7 million. Celia to $3 million and Derek to $3.1 million. Celia decides to withdraw her offer after Derek leaves with the house he wanted, but not at the price he wanted to pay. Lila spills the beans that Celia never called. She's so clever.
She is.
The next week, Edward is worried about Lila. She returns furious that she has been house hunting in a storm. On May 23rd, Edward takes Alan and Lila to Kelly's, their new residence. Talk about one extreme to the other. And then in June, Lila and Ruby are poring over her vintage recipes. Ruby has an idea. How about cooking up some of these old-time confectionaries for the customers? Lila and Ruby set up plans for a new relish based on her grandmother's recipe. Rick, Dan, and Brian inform Ruby that Kelly passes inspection and she's allowed to produce Lila's relish recipe. Lila gets the great idea to call it Pickle Lila. The wife of Frisco's cop friend Vinnie, Ruby, and Lila hired some local kids to distribute Pickle Lila. And then in October, Shone becomes a partner in Lila and Stella's relish business. Edward is appalled to hear that Lila has gone into business with Shone.
Hi.
And that I don't know why he hated Shone so much. Like, I know he was a schemer, but this was a legit business.
Well, but because it also was, I mean, he did take over ELQ, and he had an affair with Monica.
Yeah, but Lila's just trying to sell some Pickle Lila. Anyway, in 1987, in January, Lila signs up Edward for aerobics classes at the spa, but Edward is less than appreciative. In February, Lila is worried because Edward is sick, and she informs Alan and Monica. Alan thinks that Edward should undergo tests at General Hospital. His condition might be serious. Edward has polyps on his vocal cords and will have to undergo surgery to remove them. Alan and Monica convince Edward that Lila needs to be told of his condition. When Lila visits Edward in his hospital room, he admits that he is afraid. When Edward goes home with doctor's orders to rest, To Lila, Alan, and Monica's dismay, he is still conducting business. Of course he is. You knew he wasn't going to rest. The following week, Lila is proud to show Edward and Monica her and Sean's profits from their relish business. Edward tells Lila that he has to protect the Quartermaines against Shone. In April, Stella tells Edward and Lila that Pickle Lila has been selected by the Navy for their mess. Stella and Lila suspect Edward is up to something where HTI is concerned. Stella and Lila give Sean the good news about Pickle Lila. They want Sean to invest their profits into HTI. I don't know what HTI was.
I think that was one of the other companies that was
just something else that they owned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in October, the Q mansion is undergoing renovation. The Qs are confined to the den and are tired of the noise. Lila receives a letter from Edward's cousin Herbert saying he is dying and wants to spend his final days with his family. For the next few months, Lila has only mentioned the suspicious death of Herbert that we talked about during the Q staff.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get into that.
Mm-mm.
And then there really wasn't anything for the rest of the year until 1988 in May. So that was about 6 months later. Stella and Lila were discussing the Pickle Lila business. They decide to invest their profits in the stock market. Whatever monies they make will go to charity. The duo head over to see Cheryl, and Lila wants to invest $3 million into Meditech stock. In June, Lucy returns home to find Lila and Charlene in her kitchen covered in flour. They are trying out new recipes for Lila's business. Lila tells Alan and Monica that she's responsible for the drop in Meditech stock. I don't know why or what that means. And then on July 4th, Charlene and Lila try out their new confection at the picnic. And that was it for 88. And then in 89, we didn't hear anything really until April. I mean, obviously, there was like little...
Right. She was in scenes, but nothing substantial.
And like people went to her for wisdom. They went to her for guidance. And like that was all there. But I just kind of left that out. Then in April of 89, Edward prepared to leave for his fishing trip. He tells Lila he worries about her leaving her alone with Alan and Tracy, and she says that she can handle them. At the Quartermaine mansion, Tracy and Edward are planning to leave when Ned hears on the radio that a plane en route to the Bahamas has gone missing. Ned tells them Edward was on the flight. Lila walks in and they tell her the news. She is quite brave and positive. Ned and Alan leave together to go to the airport. Tracy is upset, and Lila advises her to call Ashton, Larry Ashton.
Mm-hmm.
Audrey, Steve, Bobby, Charlene, Yasmin, Ashton, and Tracy are all at the Quartermaines giving support to Lila. Lila continues to believe that everything's going to be fine. Everyone continues to rally around her, but Lila still believes Edward is fine, and she scolds Tracy and Alan for fearing the worst. Ned talks about missing Edward already and how he wishes that he could be as strong as Lila, and Lila tells Ned how much he meant to Edward. Late at night, Monica and Tracy are up worrying about Edward. They talk about Edward and Lila's great love for each other, and Tracy wishes that she had Lila's faith that Edward would be found alive. Alan and Ned call Monica and Tracy with the news that they found Edward's tackle box and that they fear the worst. Lila walks in and they tell her the news. Edward isn't coming back. Lila tells Tracy and Monica not to cry. Edward wouldn't want any tears. And then in May, there was like a lot of arguing over Edward's will. We're not going to get into all of that.
You'd expect nothing less from the Quartermaines.
Right. And then Tracy and Lila talk to Edward, talking out to his ghost and everything. And Tracy is shocked when Lila orders a martini before bed. And then over the next few months, Lila was talking to his ghost. One time she was talking in their bedroom, and there was a cigar, I guess, floating around in the air. And Edward was asking who was winning the battle, Alan or Tracy. And then Tracy sees Alan come in and tells him she is worried about Lila, and she smelled cigar smoke in her room and saw Jennings bringing up martinis to her. Lila has a drink with the judge up in her room. Lila brought another man to their room?
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know what that means.
I mean, that's how it reads, because then it says that Edward was commenting in the background. So yeah.
So this is just all still Ghost Edward. But then in December, Lila gets a visit from the Ghost Edward. He wants Jennings to fetch his tackle box from the boathouse. Alan brings Ned and Monica before the ELQ board. This is when Monica, I think, was in charge of ELQ, because I think that's how they wound up losing all their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Lila interrupts the meeting. The tackle box contains Edward's final codicil to his will. Tracy arrives at ELQ meeting. At the ELQ meeting, Lila reads the new will. Tracy and Alan will share the ELQ presidency, and Ned is the treasurer. Alan is not too happy about that. And that was it for 1989 and Lila.
I just think it's funny that everything's a codicil. I had never heard that word before watching GH. It's just a will, and that's how it is. But everybody has an extra codicil lying around to add on to it.
I've seen it more recently in things, but it's probably just one of those words that you read it, and in the context of what you're reading, you know that it applies to that, but it's not one that stands out. So I'm with you. So I guess the 80s were a little bit of or the second half of the 80s. Edward died, and Lila was apparently talking to a ghost. So
a ghost that smokes cigars.
Yes. So kind of short, sweet, and to the point. But next week we will pick up on the 90s.
Sounds good.
Which stinks, because then we're getting closer to 2004. But that's how time works.
That is.
Okay. So join us on Monday as we recap this week's shows.
Have a good weekend.
And we'll meet you at the pier.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to go to pier54podcast.com to subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave us a review. And you can also follow us on many social media channels. Just search for Pier54 Podcast. Also, we are not perfect, so if there is something that we missed or messed up, just let us know by emailing us at pier54podcast@gmail.com.